Good morning, fellow pilgrims and friends and neighbors. Thank you for joining us this morning for our daily devotional from Pilgrim Congregational Church. I'm very glad to have you join us this morning, where we are reading Genesis chapter 22. We've been in the book of Genesis now for a few weeks, and we are now in the chapter that is one of the most famous chapters in the book of Genesis. It is the story of God commanding Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. So we're going to read the first 14 verses of Genesis chapter 22, and then I'll have a few reflections, and we'll close with a prayer. Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 through 14. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, Here am I. He said, Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering upon one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. Then Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father, Abraham, my father. And he said, Here am I, my son. He said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Then Abraham put forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. He said, Do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, The Lord Will Provide. As it is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. So this is a well-known story about God commanding Abraham to sacrifice his son, a very disturbing story on many different levels. And I think it's one that we have to work to put aside all of the reflections or speculations about child sacrifice and what was going on. We do have evidence of that from this era that child sacrifice was something that was practiced in that region by some people. And of course, this passage itself lends some evidence to that Abraham would even consider this. And for this morning, we need to put that aside, because this passage is really about Abraham's faith, about Abraham offering up his most important thing in his life, his son, and the promise that goes along with this son. And I wanted to connect it with some things that I said yesterday in my sermon. Isaac was, of course, the fulfillment of an impossible promise. That is that that Abraham and Sarah would have a child in their old age. And and now God is asking Abraham to sacrifice this promise, to have the faith to do what God asked him to do. And I wanted to connect it with things I said yesterday, because I think that the faith that is required from us sometimes feels impossible. So, for example, we are asked to believe that a love which sacrifices itself for others will be victorious. We're asked to believe that a love which lays down its life for other people, to participate in that love by picking up our own crosses and following Jesus. We're asked to believe that this kind of love is a victorious power, because of course we're convinced that in order to fix things, we need more power, more money, more influence, more power in order to fix things. And of course, I don't mean to say that we shouldn't use our money and power and influence to try to make things better, but we can't use those things to ultimately be victorious. Ultimate victory lies outside of that kind of power. Ultimate victory lies in the power of divine love, this sacrificial love. And from our perspective, it looks impossible. It looks absolutely impossible. And we're asked to do something, to believe that this love will be victorious. And it takes quite a lot of faith to do that. But Abraham, I think, can be an example to us in that Abraham's faith extended even to his most precious relationship, to be able to give up our families, our friends, the things that we hold most dear, to be able to give those to God, which is a sacrifice for us. It's a huge sacrifice. And to do this in the faith that suffering love, not power of another sort, but suffering love will be victorious. Let us pray. Oh God, forgive the poverty, the pettiness, the childish folly of our prayers. Listen not to our words, but to the groanings that cannot be uttered. Hearken not to our petitions, but to the crying of our need. So often we pray for that which is already ours, neglected and unappropriated. So often for that which never can be ours. So often for that which we must win ourselves, and then labor endlessly for that which can only come to us in prayer. How often we've prayed for the coming of thy kingdom, yet when it has sought to come through us, we have sometimes barred the way. We've wanted it in others, but not in our own hearts. We feel it is we who stand between man's need and thee, between ourselves and what we might be, and we have no trust in our own strength or loyalty or courage. Oh, give us to love thy will and seek thy kingdom first of all. Sweep away our fears, our compromise, our weakness, lest at last we be found fighting against thee. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me this morning from Pilgrim Congregational Church. I'm Patrick Horn. Please join us again every morning at 9 a.m. for our daily devotional. Have a great day. Goodbye.